So, I have just finished reading The Night in the Moth by Rachel Gillig, and it had the potential of becoming my favorite fantasy book, but let me tell you why it didn't. So if you're not familiar with Rachel Gillig, she's quite well known for her first duology, The Shepherd King. It was her debut. The first book came out in 2022, the second one in 2023, and they're quite well known amongst fantasy readers. They're both quite highly rated, and I've seen them recommended by both the romance fantasy readers and the high fantasy readers, so it seems to hit the spot for the both audiences. Both books are quite short, they're both just around 400 pages. And The Night in the Moth is her latest release. It's going to be part of the series. This is book one. I'm not entirely sure whether it's going to be a duology or a trilogy or whether there's going to be more books in that series. I couldn't find that information on her homepage, but this one was released on 20th of May, both in the UK and US. And I'm quite lucky. I got myself a special edition from Waterstones. I'm pretty sure this is sold out now, and I haven't seen any other special editions here in the UK. But as far as I know, US has two special editions from Barnes & Nobles and from Target. And from what I've seen on Barnes & Noble's page, it's still available. So if you want to get one, this is your time to do so. And the main character is Sybil. She's a diviner. She has given up her ordinary life to serve a cathedral for 10 years and become one of the chosen six to see visions from the omens. And the omens are these six gods, and they each own a stone magical object, and they're capable of communicating with diviners through their dreams, and they can show the future of whoever is willing to pay for the service. And the diviners are meant to sacrifice their ordinary lives to the cathedral. They're not meant to leave the cathedral, they're not meant to enjoy normal life pleasures, and they're meant to leave their identities fully behind. But these six women don't really say no to normal human pleasures, and they don't really follow the strict cathedral rules. They tend to sneak out and still enjoy life and take the advantage of the fact that so many people are going through the cathedral and seeking the audience with them. And one day the young king and his knights come to the cathedral to have his future read, and Sybil is the chosen diviner, and there Sybil meets Rory. Rory is handsome, he's cocky, and he doesn't really believe in the divine. He doesn't really care for what Sybil does. He doesn't really care for the cathedral. He's just there to accompany the king. But all of a sudden something happens, and the diviners start disappearing, and Sybil is left on her own, only with the gargoyle and Rory trying to help her search for diviners and unravel some of the truth about the omens and the cathedral. So it sounds like such an interesting story, and truly it was. I had a wonderful time reading it. I had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But there were just some moments that couldn't quite allow me to give it 5 stars. So let's talk about the good first. So the story was genuinely interesting. The gods, the omens, the dreams, the diviners. I thought it was a wonderful setting. It was very mysterious. It was a little bit dark, and I had a lot of fun reading about it. I also really liked Sybil as a character. I loved watching her develop throughout the story and kind of unravel these truths, not just about the omens and about the cathedral, but also about herself, and sort of open up from a very different perspective. And I equally liked Rory as a character. He's charming and he's cocky, but he's not too much. He's not playing games with her. He's honest about his thoughts and his intentions and his feelings towards her. And I thought as far as romance fantasy goes, he was a wonderful male character. And with all of that, I also really enjoyed the romance plotline. It wasn't out of place, there wasn't too much of it. I didn't feel like the romance was pulling away from fantasy or the fantasy was pulling away from romance. It felt like a very balanced book. And the part that I enjoyed the most was the gothic and the dark fantasy elements, that almost slight horror where I could feel the slightest bit of a chill. I really loved it. I thought it was wonderfully written. But that kind of leads me to the bad. For me personally, and that is absolutely just my opinion, just my preference, just, what I would have wanted from this book, I really wish she just fully leaned into the mystery and the horror and, the dark and gothic elements, because I thought the writing of those moments was absolutely beautiful. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. She was so good at setting up that atmosphere, and I just craved more of it. And I thought within that setting, she could have also gone a little bit deeper into characters and into history. I wanted to know a little bit more about each omen, how they came to be, why are they what they are, what are their intentions, sort of how all of this came to the place that it was now. And I also wanted to know a little bit more about the history of the cathedral and the history of the diviners. And I'm not entirely sure, maybe that's something that is going to be explored in the next book, but in the first book, I was sort of missing that a little bit. And to kind of add on to me wanting it to be a little bit darker and more gothic, I just wasn't a huge fan of the humor element. I wasn't a huge fan of the gargoyle as a character. There were a lot of funny interactions between him and Sybil. I just didn't really want them. They felt a little bit out of place for me and a little bit forced. So all in all, I thought it was a good book. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I just kind of wished it leaned a little bit more into those dark fantasy elements. I wanted to see more about different characters and wanted to read a little bit more about the history. I think if she made the book a little bit longer, you could have had those elements and it would not have taken away from romance. But I'm not entirely sure if maybe she just wanted to keep it a certain length or if she just wanted to streamline it within the romance fantasy genre. So for me, this is a very solid, maybe 3.5 to 4 stars. I enjoyed reading it. I absolutely do not regret picking it up. I am very interested in reading the next book. So especially if you love romance fantasy, I think you would be a huge fan of this and I 100% recommend you pick this up. And if you're a high fantasy reader and you've never read romance fantasy and you want to start and give it a go, I think this book would be the perfect entry point. So if you've read it, let me know what you thought. I would absolutely love to chat about it. I'm thinking of picking up the Shepherd King duology, but I'm not entirely sure if maybe I would have the exact same criticism as I did for this book. So let me know in the comments if you think I would enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.